click something.
Hello, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I am your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me today is one of my very own online students, Josh Boccechiamp. I think I pronounced your last name correctly. As people will see, it doesn't look like it should be pronounced that way when they look at it on the screen. Josh came to me last year, and we did some online coaching together, and he had some big ambitions, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that he went through. He's a busy guy. He's a teacher. He's a dad. He's a husband. He's many of the things that many of us are. But now the big thing is that he is also strong, confident, physically capable at a more advanced age. He's not old per se, but certainly at a more advanced age than even when he's younger. And many people have this idea that their best years are behind them when it comes to their strength and conditioning and their physicality. And Josh is going to single-handedly prove that wrong. So we're going to dive in very momentarily. One thing I would definitely be remiss if I didn't mention is that if you have not yet gotten a copy of my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge, you are making a catastrophic error, but you can absolutely remedy it. Oh, and absolutely. And Josh, for those who are watching this on YouTube, you may be able to see this. Josh is holding up a copy of my No BS kettlebell and bodyweight kickstart program. We'll talk about that one too. That one's available on Amazon. And if you like that sort of a thing, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna try out the free thing first, then my 9-minute challenge will definitely be right up your alley. And it segues perfectly into the No BS book that I've written. But here's a big thing. Okay, go to 9minutechallenge.com. That's the number 9minutechallenge.com. You can get your own copy. It's designed around movements that have a very, very short learning curve and that have a very big impact on your strength and conditioning. Mostly moves that comprise of the gait pattern, so your body's walking pattern. And so stuff like crawling, loaded carries, things like that. You can do it with whatever other program you're doing. I know Josh has been a big fan of it. He's mentioned having done it for quite some time. So I'm not just whistling Dixie when I say that it is a lot of fun and it works great with whatever other program you're doing. So again, 9minutechallenge.com, and it is all yours. Now, we are going to jump right in because I think, Josh, is this your first podcast interview you've ever done?
Yeah, this would be certainly my first podcast I've ever done.
Awesome. Well, you're already a natural because you knew to, bring up some sort of like advertising for one of my books. So I gotta hand it to you. I thought you were like a total natural. Now, again, I told a little bit about like how we got started working together, but tell us a little bit about who you are, like what you do for a living, and let's in particular dive into like your origin story, like your training as well, basically your physical activity as a kid, if you were into fitness, all that sort of a thing. Like, let's get a good idea of where you've come from.
Sure. Thanks, Alex. So I'm 42. I am a father of two. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I am not a young dad by any means. When you do the math the other way, I'll be in my late 50s when they are, out of high school. So there's that, and that's in the back of my mind. Going back to where, and I'm a teacher, right? So I'm a middle school teacher, and I've been a coach for a long time. Going back to my origin with fitness. My father always he grew up with the Arnold Schwarzenegger era, and he had like weights around the house, and I don't think he ever really like trained a specific plan, and he certainly didn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I grew up with like free weights sitting around the house, and I was always like fascinated by the idea of strength. I did karate. I was almost a black belt in Taekwondo, and we ended up moving from Texas to New York. So I kind of missed that opportunity. I fell in love with playing basketball as a child. So I played a lot of basketball. And then when I was a little older too, I got into football. So, all throughout high school, I played, basketball, football, and I started to lift weights when I was in high school, quite a bit. I took to it. I had a coach who he was a Division III football player and star, and he would say, he put us on a fitness program, and I did it was late 90s. Nebraska was the big team at the time. They had the the
Still has skills.
trio, the powerlifting trio, and we didn't know what it was. And it's not like the internet like there was now, right? So you do the bench, the squat, the deadlift, and your numbers add up to whatever they add up, and it puts you in a percentage. I weighed 185 pounds at the time, and I benched about 270, squatted 450, and deadlifted. It was almost a triple, so I think it was 545. So my total numbers added up to about 1,100 pounds, which for a high school senior was pretty good. That's where I was starting. And the one thing that I noticed from that, it's funny though, is that all those at the time they felt like big numbers, and it didn't really translate to success in like sports. It made me feel worse at basketball, the higher I got up and lifting in those three. And in football, we had a wiry 155-pound quarterback who could like throw me around. If we were wrestling, he could like throw me around. And like the guys who wrestled on the wrestling team could do that too. And it's so I could move weight, but it didn't. I was like fine. But I wasn't like, it didn't stand out. But like even though my numbers were higher than a lot of my peers, and so I take that to college, and I didn't play sports in college, but I went to college in Philadelphia, and it's a very active pickup basketball community. I'm playing and doing, noticing I'm doing more pull-ups and push-ups and dips. I kind of like that feel. I felt like the numbers, not the numbers, but the strength lasted longer, was more transferable. I lived in the East Village, and there was a monkey bar, like a big fitness center with monkey bars, and I'm doing the monkey bars, and I'm teaching myself to like do that. Things feel great. Everything's wonderful. I stopped training my legs at the time, and now I'm thinking about it. I developed plantar fasciitis in my like mid 20s, and I lived with that for years, right? Until in my 30s, and I basically just kicked it recently since working with you, and then but things like kind of downgraded over time, right? So I had these big numbers, and then a little at a time, things are, I'm not able to lift quite the same. I'm achy here, I'm achy there. I remember I took some time off, and then I went back and was like, oh, I want to get back into squatting because I think that doing legs are good. And I get under the bar and I can't get under the bar. The shoulders won't go, right? So I was like, all right, well, at least I can still deadlift. And I went to do deadlifts, and I think I did 225 a couple, maybe once or twice, and then my lower back killed me the next day. So it's like a little bit over time, gradually over time, things got taken away, and without me ever really understanding or knowing like how it was happening, to the point where I'm 37, I'm expecting a child. I had also, so I was expecting a child, and I physically feel like a wreck. I am tired. Feel broken down. I can't really lift my arms above my head. My feet hurt all the time. I can't run. So I'm doing all these things that didn't make any sense. Sorry. So it started off good, but that's kind of
No. This is
okay.
very good. I've never heard this story
Yeah.
before. I've heard the vagaries, from the past when we talked about things. I haven't heard the details, so I'm like,
Well,
like if I didn't know that I come into the picture at some point, I'd be like, well, how did you ever overcome
right.
it?
So there, but there's like two. I guess before you, there were kind of like two rock bottom moments, right? So I was in my mid 30s, and in New York, and I have a feeling that you're kind of like this too. But no, you're not exactly like this, but like in New York, it's people don't really have hobbies. They like work, and then they like don't work, and they like party, but it's not like they like learn other languages or like they're just like there's just so much pressure all the time to do like what do you do,
Sure.
um so I felt completely burnt out to the point where I developed like a metabolic developed a thyroid issue, an autoimmune issue. My weight ballooned up to over 200 pounds, so which is high for me. I'm only about 5'10", a little less than 5'10", I'll say 5'10". But I didn't mind that because I could bench, I could get back on the bench, and my working weight on the bench was back to 225. It hadn't been like that in a while. I was like, all right, well, I don't know why I'm so heavy, but it's fine, and then all of a sudden, like within 4 months, I had a really stressful basketball season. I was a coach at the time, and my weight dropped from like 205, say, down to 155 in about 4 months. And and again, you're in New York, and was like, oh my God, what diet are you on? You look amazing. It's like, well, I have this metabolic condition that gives me a resting heart rate of 100. So which was terrible. But what happened from there is I lost like all of my strength. So I went from being able to like, you know, walk around and do, eight pull-ups or 30 push-ups, if not more, like at any moment. And then I couldn't even do 10, so it was like completely flattened out. And what made this worse is, when I got married, I didn't know my wife was listening, but I wrote my own vows. And one of the things I vowed to do was she was always carry heavy things for her. I was like, oh, I vow to carry heavy things for you. I vow to keep you warm. And it's one of these things. And all of a sudden, I can't even lift. I can't lift. I'm trying to help her with her work. I can't do anything. I can't lift up anything. I can't function. Right. So I got over that. I started to build my way back up, and it never kind of got back up to the same level of strength. But what happened was, as I'm trying to make myself stronger and stronger and stronger, not doing it necessarily correctly, and my mobility is like lessening and lessening and lessening, and I'm not aware of it. So, my son is born. I'm about 37, and 38 at the time, and this is so the run rock bottom moment is like I can't listen to I can't lift things for my wife anymore. Build my way up from that. My second one, though, which is what brought me to you, is that I have my son, and we go to the city for the day. My brother-in-law is in town. My brother's a big, strong man. He's a former Army guy. He's about 6'1", 200 pounds, just strong. And I'm walking around with my son. He's got his 3 kids. I'm with my son, carrying him all day, carrying him like this all day, because I can't lift my arms above my head. Remember when you're a kid, you want to be put up on dad's shoulders. And I had never been able to do that for my son. So I'm carrying him like this. And I'm like, fine. I'm not even thinking about it, to be honest. Like I'm not even thinking about it. And then, we're out all day. It's been hours out, or we're going around New York City. And he's like, oh, take a break. I was kind of tired. Take a break. Hold on to your son for a little bit. And he just takes him, and he just pops him up on his shoulders and pops him up on his head, and above his head. My son's walking around, and like he lit up, because he is, riding on somebody's shoulders, and he's about 1.5 years old. And meanwhile, I can't even like lift my arms above my head. And I'm like, something is wrong. Right. So, so I've been dealing with plantar fasciitis for like 10 or 12 years at that point, off and on. I can't lift my arms above my head. Every time I try to run, it's like the plantar fasciitis acts up. Every time I try to lift too much, the front is going to like, and I think like a lot of people at the time, I'm not even looking for quick fixes. Like I had a decent idea on how to I thought I had a decent idea how to work out, but it's like you try these like challenges. Oh, if I could just do like 50 burpees a day for 30 days, or like 100 push-ups a day for 30 days. And like after, and I just kind of cycle through all these type of things, and I start out fine, but after, day 5, the front of my shoulder is to the point where I can't use it anymore. I can't do it. Right. I start running. It's like, oh, I'll just do a light week of running, which is what they tell you. It's like, I'll just jog 12 miles this week. Right. 5 days of, 5 days of, whatever the math is. And all of a sudden my legs, I can't, I'm done running, and then I'm like hobbling for the next couple of days. I'm still playing basketball, but I can't lift my arms above my head, and I'm hobbling for like 3 days afterwards. And like something had to give, and the pandemic was rough on a lot of us, but it gave me, I was fortunate enough to have a sort of a pandemic proof career, where it's like I'm my job changed, but I was still getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. I was like, all right, well, I'm home now. Let me try to focus on a couple things. It brought me to, a few different podcasts, and then which brought me to you eventually. I listened to you, and your vision of strength and building strength first in my body was like the thing that made the most sense to me, and rebuilding, because that was the fundamental thing that was missing, right? Like still felt strong, but like not in the right places, if that makes sense.
100%.
A lot of me talking. So.
Absolutely. No, this is exactly something that I think a lot of people experience, because, I resonate with what you're talking about when it comes to like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because when I was growing up, I was like, man, Schwarzenegger is the best. And then eventually, I got into like martial arts. So I was like, man, Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was the man. And I bought, in fact, I was just leafing through it the other day, but a book purportedly about his training called The Art of Expressing the Human Body. And I mean, there's like millions of exercises in this thing. It's like very bodybuilding kind of oriented. So it's still in the same vein as like the Schwarzenegger approach, and then the muscle and fitness stuff that every kid, looks at and is like, I want to look like that guy or that guy. But it doesn't really give you a good enough idea of what your body, how your body has to be able to perform in order to even get you to that point. So it sounds like, one of the things that you experienced is, I want to do a challenge to get in shape. So I'm going to start doing this kind of high performance activity, like running every day or doing a bunch of burpees every day. But the moving parts that are supposed to allow you to be able to do those things safely weren't in proper working order. And a big part of strength is that you should feel stronger when you're done. You shouldn't feel like you're more broken down and weak and what have you. And yeah, I can resonate with that completely. I went through a very similar process, many years ago, but nevertheless, I definitely experienced it. And so had you discovered kettlebells? I'm sure you discovered kettlebells before you and I started working together, right? Or is this something that kind of came along right around that time?
Well, so I learned about kettlebells. Kettlebell is singular for me at the time. I learned about kettlebells from like I want to say like Tim Ferriss. I don't know. I was listening to some podcast, and I think it was Tim Ferriss, and he said he works out 3 days a week. He does 75 two-hand swings. I didn't know what he was talking about, right? But he does 75 two-hand swings 3 times a week. He didn't say the weight. He didn't say how fast he does it, rep scheme, anything like that. But it was like, oh, what's a kettlebell? Like that's interesting. Like I wanted to play more basketball and I wanted to work out less. So I was like, oh, if you could just do that, that sounds kind of cool. So I went on to Amazon or went on to and I shopped by price, not by weight. And I ended up getting this like, I mean, it probably would cost like $200 if I try to get it, or $150 if I got it now. But I got this it's like 20 kg competition kettlebell. It's about 10 years old now, and I would just kind of like go on YouTube and like watch a couple of things, and so, and then I started reading about Pavel. I think I heard him on Joe Rogan, and that brought me to Strong First, and you could learn a couple of movements. It was the same, but it was the same issue that I was having, where it was like, I'm doing these kettlebell things, and I feel pretty good about them, but like I'm sure if you see somebody just kind of pick them up and they don't know what they're doing, the wrong things are working, the wrong parts are moving. And so it's like, I'm doing the snatches and it's like, fine, but like my trap is lit up, and I'm doing I wanted to learn how to do a Turkish get up, so I'm trying to teach myself to do that, but it was, so you could, with that weight, it felt like a lot at the time, but you could kind of like gut through a couple things. But it's like anytime I try to get up higher than that weight, it was like, forget about it, and
Yeah.
so, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I think you're describing what a lot of people have been through, because so many people, this kind of goes back to, again, like the glossy fitness magazines, bodybuilding stuff in particular, where it's like, you're encouraged, try this at the gym. Here's the ultimate ab workout. Here's a way to blast your arms or whatever. So you just kind of apply that mindset to kettlebell training. And then it's funny because you think, okay, well, I mean, look, I've bench pressed, 270 or 275 or whatever it may be. So what's 40 pounds? What's the big deal? And then you try to do a Turkish get up or even a military press. You're like, why is this so difficult? Nothing about this seems like it should be so hard. And that, I think that experience by itself kind of drives people to want to find, they understand that this is something unlike what they've seen before, because there is a level of competence that's required for it, as well as a level of what I like to call movability, in order to actually get something out of it that makes you say, I want to learn how to do this. So I'm going to need someone who can actually teach me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, did you end up finding people like locally, or did you just continue the search online to kind of like hone and sharpen your technique?
I'd listened to Dan John on a podcast, and I was just like, he has his 10 things that every man should be able to do, and it's like, hang for 2 minutes and like get up off the floor and like that. So this was kind of at the start of this was like in 2020, and I was like, that made a lot of sense to me. I just turned 40. It was like a lot of these ideas made sense to me. And then so I'd started to look him up online. And of course, the first thing you read about is the 10,000 swing challenge. So I am, so I was like, all right, so I'm going to learn how to do this. And I did feel comfortable with my two-hand swing, so I had gotten it, I don't know what the certification levels are of these people, but, people at like New York Sports Club, for example, I don't do the gym anymore, but like New York Sports Club is like, oh, it's a pretty good swing, and it's like, so I felt okay with that. So I'm diving in with the 10,000 swing challenge with a 45, with a 45-pound bell. And that again that was like the first thing that I ever, like, that's the first program and challenge that I'd ever actually completed. So it felt good and it got easier over time. But like, I started off with at this time, there's enough out there where it's like, oh, I'm supposed to feel it in your butt. So it's like, all right, and so I'd gotten better at it from that. It still wasn't quite the same, but it was, like as working with you, but it was still like I could, at least for this basic movement, I could piece together enough with a light enough weight to not hurt myself for 10,000 swings over the course of 20 days. If I had done it with any heavier weight, I think I would have broken.
Well, it's impressive actually to have finished it even with the 20-kilo bell. It's about 44 pounds, because I have at least one friend who's a colleague of mine. He's not in the fitness industry anymore, but yeah, he was a kettlebell instructor, and he did the 10,000 swings challenge with like a 24-kilo bell.
Yeah.
So I mean, and you were somebody who was just kind of learning, and you were working your way through it like that. So that is definitely, and I can imagine that it felt pretty good to have accomplished something by the end, because you said, usually 5 days into a challenge, like, my shoulder hurts, my feet are killing me, my knees are
things are, I mean, for me, and I'm not gonna, I just got your grip challenge because I still have this kind of issue, but it's like, sorry to if I shouldn't bring it up, but like,
no,
it's for me, like at that time, it's the on my left hand, my ring finger and my pinky finger were like smoked the entire time. And like, that's, I mean, till this day, it's like, that's still strength wise, I've built up enough where I'm pretty competent in most of my other areas, but that is the limiting factor for me, like, getting high rep snatches or, with heavier weights or high rep swings or any of the things. It's like these two fingers on this hand, so yes, but it was great to like feel success, and it catapulted, it springboarded me to try other things. But it's still, once I heard that, I listened to you on a podcast, and I'd said that I had listened to you on a podcast, and I just liked a lot of the things that you were saying about building strength. And I still felt like, even though I could do this swing, and even though I could do a number of movements, I still felt like I lacked a fundamental level of strength that was required for me to do not just like kettlebells, but really like anything, and it's like, and it's, so I could, as to be a father, I could get it together enough, but I couldn't, like, I just wasn't physically strong enough, and I think, I don't know if the people who listen to you are all complete, like, I feel like I lose track sometimes, because I can do like 5 pull-ups whenever, right, and 20 push-ups, and I'm not like bragging that those are amazing numbers, but like, if people who are listening, like, you think about the people you work with, like, how many of them can do 5 pull-ups? Like, I mean, maybe you probably everybody, but like, if you go out or in your neighborhood, like, how many people can do 5 pull-ups? It's like, it's so I lose that sometimes, that like, I probably was pretty strong throughout, but like, I still knew that I lacked this fundamental strength, whereas like, oh, if I want to do, a kettlebell complex, and I'm doing as many rounds as possible, in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or those armor building complex or whatever, I get like, I can't do it beyond like 8 minutes. I can't do it. I'm physically gassed. I've done I rolled for jujitsu when I was a while ago, and your hands gas out, and then you're done for the rest. It's that same sort of feeling, throughout in a number of aspects of life. And that does apply to your daily grind. That does apply to like your work, that does apply to your parenting, and you kind of forget about things at times, but like, if you lack that fundamental strength that like can that doesn't you have to gain that fundamental strength that can transfer over into other things. And like building that was like, and smartly, intelligently building that that's been what I was missing for years.
Yeah, well, you bring up a very important point for most people, because I think for most people, leaving aside how many push-ups or pull-ups you can do, or how many this and that, because I mean, those are very important markers of your general strength. You brought up something earlier that I think is especially important. It's that you talked about translating that strength into other things. You weren't even able to put your kid on your shoulders because your shoulders were just so tight and so dysfunctional. And seeing that your brother could put your son on his shoulders, and your son just loved it. This is the sort of a thing. This is why people want to get strong. You want to be able to make these memories with your children and with your family members. I think a lot of times I can say this too now, having grown up a little bit, that my dad always had a bad back, and he's okay now, but growing up he had a bad back, and so we could still roughhouse, and we could still go out and like go on nature hikes with the family and stuff like that. But there was a certain like level of limitation that I saw, and that I didn't necessarily see in my friends' parents. And so I remember thinking like, well, it's very strange, because it's like, now my dad had back issues because he was a mechanic for many years, and so he like, see, I mean, 120-pound dude carrying like 100 some pound engine block in both hands, like one in either hand, like across his shop multiple times a day, like it wears on you. So it
probably crush your hand now. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
on your friend's dad's hands.
Yeah, he's got the the old man strength, as it were. So but yeah, you do start to see that, and as a kid you think like, oh, is that what it's going to be like when I'm older, like, or
right.
and so you want to be able to set the right example for your kids and say, oh no, what, like, not only does it not have to be like that, but you can even get better, because your kids may remember. You never know. I mean, maybe at a year and a half it might be a little difficult for your son to remember taking a
But I
ride.
remember, but like I told you an anecdote about, we went on vacation this time around, it was in Florida, and when I grew up, my father always had his shirt on whenever we went to the pool, which was he almost never went to a pool.
Mhm.
And and I never really knew why, but I grew up and like, and I do know why now, but like I grew up and never seen my father like take his shirt off out in public, or even in private really. And in that, I remember when I would like try out for sports, like I would always like want to leave a shirt on, and like I'm shirts and skins, which I don't think they do anymore, but like shirts and skins, like, oh my God, like no. And I don't think I was like too out of shape, or but it was just that mindset, when
Yeah.
I was younger. And then that developed to when I was in my 30s, and I was softer in a lot of places, and I didn't want to take my shirt off, and I didn't want to be out. And I'm on vacation I was on vacation in April, and I was just like, like taking my shirt off. And we just got out for a week of family vacation, and we're pool and beachside, and I'm like fine with it, and like walking around without a shirt on. And I've gone through ebbs and flows with that, where I feel like self-conscious about this throughout my life, but I think it stems back, and I don't want my son to feel that way, and
Yeah,
I do. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, it's, to me, what it sounds like, this is an excellent example. It's like it's like what you're kind of subconsciously teaching them by what you do. Like, your dad never said, be modest and don't take your shirt off at the pool or anything like that. He didn't give you a reason why he wasn't gonna do it.
Right,
He just didn't do it, and then it kind of gets imprinted on you. And people forget this, I think, not yet being a parent, this is just my observation, but I think people forget that their kids are just awaiting instruction, and most of the instructions that they download into their heads don't come from eat up, wash your ears, do your homework, whatever, but it's what the parents do. Like, I still catch myself doing stuff that, like, I saw my parents, they're not bad stuff, just like little things that I saw my parents do. And they never said, hey, when this happens you have to do this, but you internalize it. And so
you're a constant example. They're always, mine as a teacher, I've seen that as well. But like, and you're a teacher too. I mean, if you were out of shape, if you were like, if you were late to things, if like it sets the wrong, message, maybe not like outwardly, but like if you're unkind or impolite, all these things. And I was my son the other day, yesterday, he was we went to a playground, and I took my daughter for a walk to get her to nap. She's young enough to walk, and I did a little bit of your kettlebell and body weight challenge. I did the crawling part, which I'm still trying to trying to catch, like 3 minutes of successive crawling. Like I feel like that should be, sometimes I talk about like, oh, I want to be able to like lift up my like heaviest kettlebell, or if I could just crawl for 3 minutes, leopard crawl without stopping forward and backwards, I think that would probably be better for me than really most other things.
You would feel it, man. You
Well, I
probably
do
would have
feel
a
it. I'm
very
not there
nice
yet.
impact on those military presses in any
Yeah.
case.
I
Absolutely.
do feel a big difference in those, but I mean, I guess like, so I did that. I'm trying to get to a handstand push-up, and I do my handstand for a while, and my son's, and then there's the monkey bars, so I'm climbing around in the monkey bars, which I couldn't do for years, but I did again, your hanguary, right? I love the names. Like I did hanguary,
Yeah.
and the shoulders they felt good beforehand, but they have felt like, I sleep with my arms up again. I always do this when I'm on with you because I couldn't do this for years, and like,
Yeah.
and so then I'm hanging and doing the monkey bars around, and then so I'm back to just kind of like hanging out and just being like a normal person. And all of a sudden my son's like, oh, I got to do my workout too. And he's like, he doesn't see me like lift weights, but he's like, he starts like kind of crawling around and climbing up on things, and he's making all the weird grunting noises that I probably do. And it's like ridiculous and hysterical, but I mean, it's good, it's good that he's developing his like physical identity or physical culture at 5, because he could
Yeah.
very easily be sitting, and if he watched me playing on the phone all the time, like then he's like, Dad, why don't I have a phone?
Yeah, exactly. Or what games do you play? What games
Right.
should I play? Right. Yeah. You want them to see you doing this stuff naturally, that because they want to be like you, they want to emulate you, for better or for worse. It's just kind of like they're like sort of like a servo mechanism that's just kind of following, a particular target. So you gotta lead the way. And again, it's a lot of the stuff that I can say this again, having been a young son at one point, like what your parents tell you specifically or verbally, you may not, like, yeah, you completely brush it off. But like what you see them do, you're
Yeah.
just gonna internalize. You don't even realize it. You're not
You
thinking,
know,
okay, now I have to do the same thing. It
yeah.
just happens.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
this is a perfect example because, it reminds me when probably when you were a kid too, but when I was a kid, I used to love playing on the monkey bars. And it's funny because I look back at doing stuff that now would be considered like very advanced, but it was just like, like what you call like the skin the cat, where you hang on a bar and you bring your feet under and then you hang with your, your
Right.
hands behind you. And it was like, nobody taught me to do it. It was just something I thought, well, I'll give it a shot, and I did
Yeah.
it as like an elementary school kid. And so it's great to see that he's at that age. He's already starting to do some of these things. And like you said, he's getting his own identity in terms of physical culture. And that's going to give him a huge leg up on the other kids who are probably playing on their phones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's like, with my daughter, it's the same thing. Like she watches and she does that too. I forgot. I had a point to make. I was just thinking about when I was younger and doing elementary school, they could still do like the rope, and
Yeah.
climb the rope. And I would always want to be one of those. I couldn't climb the rope, but I was always wanted to be one of those kids that could. I just didn't know how to do it. So I've been trying to teach myself to climb the rope now, and I want him to be able to do it and her to be able to do it.
Totally.
It had nothing to do with gender back then. I mean, some of these.
Yeah, everybody was like, get up the rope.
Yeah, get up the rope.
By hook or by crook, you're going to do it. Yeah, I remember there was a commercial when I was a kid where it was like, it was like somebody at the end of it climbs up the rope. It was like kind of triumphantly. I think maybe they were scared at the beginning. I only really remember the very end where the person taps this red cloth thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Remember this commercial? Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember when I did gymnastics as a kid, there was a rope like that. And but instead of having a cloth thing, it was an actual like really loud, terrifying bell. So I was kind of like glad that people weren't doing it all the live long day because it sounded like a fire alarm. It was like super.
If you
super
climbed
loud.
up there, I'm sure you'd want to do that.
Oh, of course, yeah. And then the only worry would be that if it's like louder than what you anticipate, you like lose your grip. You don't want to try to recatch the rope on the way down. You also don't want to fall. It's like a real catch-22. But no, I think rope climbing is great. In fact, as of the time of this chat we're having, just the other day, I posted a video of me doing a rope climb too. I'll have to see, later remind me, and I'll send you a video I did of like rope climbing progressions.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that stuff is awesome. Kids love it. It doesn't feel like exercise. It feels like fun,
It's
you know?
so it's hard. I mean, I think that's what I'm hoping. The hands. I'm hoping that you get building the strength in my hands. I'm sure it's like pulling. Having worked with, like, the reason that I really like working with you though is like, you know, some of the conversations we have of like, I don't really know how to like activate my lat in this like situation, or like my butt doesn't feel like it's working. You like
Yeah,
kind of give me these things that, like, you know, make you want to make the muscles that are supposed to do the work, you know, and
yeah,
that's how you don't get hurt, according to you. And I
allegedly.
allegedly, and I've come to agree with that. But it's but I feel like, yeah, I got to get those hands right to get up that rope because
Totally. It does take some time, but it is 100% worth it for sure.
so,
Now, on the topic of that, I like hearing about this because, most people think, I'm in my 40s, rope climbing, that's, for the birds or for Czech people who inexplicably love rope climbing. Now, no, seriously,
or just good at it. They're just
yeah,
good.
well, they're like, it's like a Czech thing specifically. I've been to the Czech Republic a number of
Oh,
times.
I would
I
like check
remember,
that.
yeah, no, like,
Oh,
yeah, like there used to be rope climbing used to be like a very popular kind of like, I don't know if I would say pastime, but there were competitions for it. I think it was in the Olympics even, but they still have them in the Czech Republic, and so they've got and there are
must have
types of rope
strong people
climbing
there.
you had no idea even existed, like upside down rope climbing,
Oh my god.
and just insane stuff. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And again, I think most people look at that as like, it's a young man's game. But this shows me, and this is what I want to talk to you about next, because I really like hearing this, is that you've got ambitions then that go beyond just like, hey, I want to keep in reasonably good shape and keep up with my kids. I think this is exactly what everybody should strive for. But you've also elevated it to something where you're like, I want to see how much further I can go. And I want to see the things that maybe I couldn't do as a youngster. I want to see if I can do them now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was listening to this is a slight difference, but like I was listening to a podcast of yours. I forgot who the guest was, but the phrase "die mighty" was
Yes. Steve Holliner.
oh my god, it was like, and it's just like the light went on. It's like I was like, oh yeah, like you could just keep on going and going and going, and it's like because it's a lot of the things that I'm striving to do. It's not like I'm trying to deadlift like, 800 pounds, or
Sure.
like I'm not trying to like get to some of these, like it's literally just do things that we can do
Mhm.
as people, and do them better, so it's like for me personally, like my goal, I consulted with you at some point. I was like, oh, I'm trying to build my home gym, like, and I could spend like $1,000 on a what's it called, on a the barbell and the squat rack, or I could,
Yeah.
take half that money and invest it in kettlebells. And like, it's like, oh, if you want to do it, you can, but you probably just be fine and just get two heavier kettlebells and do that. But it's like, if I could make my squat right, it doesn't matter if I'm like back squatting 400 pounds, and like, or whatever double body weight is. If I can't do it right, and I think that was an important thing. Actually, I missed this when I talked about my when I was a kid and I did those numbers. Like my bench is a 270. Like I think I went to like my collar. I think it went down to my collarbone, and it
Yeah.
definitely got. I didn't feel right about that one when it was there, but like, and I could just, and I got spotted, like it got spotted up, like somebody hit the bar and they just put it on the board. It's like the number. It's like, I don't think I really benched 270 right there, but like,
Well,
and the squat, sorry, real quick, the squat was down to the bench, right? It wasn't like I asked to grass. The squat
yeah.
was to the bench, and and the deadlift probably was real because I remember there wasn't a lot of like science behind it. I just like, oh, what do? You just stand up, like, okay, like I could just kind of even see and
Right.
coming down, but like that's how kids are. It's like, oh, I just climb the rope. All right, it's not like you have to overthink it. It's like
Yeah.
build ten. Like we tend to do that as adults a lot more. We're like, oh, I gotta know every know every and you probably do to do it safely. But when you're a kid, you can just like squat, and my daughter too, she just squats, and like, and if I can make my squat do that, it doesn't matter if I can squat 400 pounds or do a goblet squat with the 45 or the 53. It's if I can physically get my body into that shape,
Hmm.
that benefits me, and that's like my goal, right? Like it's not that I have like number goals at this point. If I just have like shape goals, and that doesn't, that's not an age thing. Like, that has nothing to do with anything, and
You're
it's
100% right.
I mean,
It's I like that you brought that up because I think, well, number one, we tend to be more, it's not really like self-conscious is not probably the right word, because we're really other people conscious when we say self-conscious, because we're thinking about what are other people going to think about me. So it's, you know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
kids don't really have this. They just like to play and what have you. And I think the reason that they don't overthink things, part of it is because they have not, in many cases, they haven't yet developed that other people consciousness. But then the other thing is that generally speaking, their bodies work better
yeah,
and they're more used to using them because they want to play, they want to move around, they want to be very physically active. So it's like that is very normal for them. And this is something I see a lot and in increasing amounts actually, with the adults that I work with. And this is one of the reasons why I focus so heavily on movement and making sure that they move properly and emphasize that over just the numbers, on the kettlebell that they're using,
totally.
is because the less capable your movement is, or the narrower your margin for error, the more likely that you're going to have some serious errors. And then the more focus you have to put on technique, because it feels so unnatural for your body because so many things aren't working properly. So it's like if you had to try to imagine, driving a car that had all sorts of problems, like let's say, it had like paper thin brakes and the chassis was really wobbly and all of these other problems. So the person handing you the keys and being like, you can borrow my car, but you're gonna have to use the e-brake in order to stop because the brakes don't work. You got to be really careful turning the corners because the chassis and there's no sway bar. Like you would say, okay, there's a problem with the car. Like learning all these little tricks and
Yeah,
tactics
you
to
learn to
drive it.
downshift a little bit, right? It's like,
Yeah, exactly. It's like
slow down.
this is not
That's not right.
you would care enough about your car to take it in, but a lot of people don't think about like taking care of their movement. They think, oh well, I'm on the wrong side of 40 or something
I
like
just
that.
can't lift
So
my arms above my head anymore. Like
I
it's just
guess
not a thing
I
I
guess
do.
they weren't made to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a cope if ever there was one. Incidentally, just going back, this is a very side note thing, but you mentioned like a bench press to the collarbone. That is actually a legitimate press. It's called the guillotine press. There was a guy, Vince Gironda, who preferred that to the regular bench press. I don't prefer that in any case because he called it a guillotine press for a very obvious reason. It looks like it's about to chop your head off. So,
Uh,
at any rate, it ended up on the board. That's the important thing for you. But
I
yeah,
think, I mean, last time I was in my high school was a long time ago. All my numbers were still up there. So that means in the weight class that I was at, there hasn't been, I'm sure, I feel like that can't, like, that nobody's come there yet. So
that's amazing, dude. Well, I think that's definitely worth celebrating. That's for sure. You got to give yourself at least that
however
much.
illegitimate I feel about it, it's like, oh, it's only to the bench, but
Dude, you earned it. Somebody else wrote it up there.
yeah,
You did it. They wrote
there's
it.
no story behind it. And there was before you would post it online or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, before we wrap up here, we've talked a lot about stuff that I think is going to be important for really any dad, or gentleman who wants to keep up with his kids, and also wants to keep his own ambitions in mind for his training and needs to start somewhere. So, what advice do you have, having been, let's say at the bottom, and then now being on this rise far beyond where you were in the past? What advice would you have for busy dads, who have a job, a mortgage, spouse, all sorts of things to think about, but
I
they
have
still
all
want
these
to get in
things.
shape without feeling overwhelmed?
I mean, I think, I mean, I personally think the greatest investment that I ever made, doesn't matter like what weights that I got or gym memberships, is just working with a trainer. It could be, the Hebrew Hammer. It doesn't have, it could be just working with somebody. Like that's the
Yeah.
investment, right? Um, that you should make. And the thing that I like about, I'm sure you could write me programs to make me like, feel horrible and lose a lot of weight and do all these things, and you've been theoretically, you have actually done those things. But like, but I mean, the thing that you focus on is the movement that is important. And I think that finding a trainer that will work with you on what you need is like really the most important investment that you could make. And if it means, a couple less, beers, here or there, or nights out, or if it means you like figure out a way. It's not, it's like once a month that I called you up when that we work together for a while, and then then you can kind of meet, you can space it out based on budget after that. But like finding out what that person is, and then who can make you like focus you in the right direction, I think really matters, right? And more so, if you can find an hour a month to work with somebody. And then what I found also with working with you, because I've tended to work out with I've moved to a home gym, and like I work out with myself now, and like I don't have nobody, there's nobody to hold me accountable other than me. And it's not like you're going to be like, oh, you didn't do this or that, you just, that's not the point. But it's like, what's, having that conversation about your progress, having that conversation about what is still giving you your trouble, if there's something that needs to be worked on. I think that really made a huge difference to me.
Yeah.
And it's I can still kind of, I mean, I still have the inclinations to like, I don't program hop quite the same way, but like, I still have the inclination to like, oh, I want to try something else out, or I just want to like, coast for a little bit or whatever. But like just having that consistent, educated voice makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And it's not like too much time, right? It's like you just play one less round of golf, and then there it is. And I know that's blasphemous to some who like golf, one, but like it's just one of these things that like it will 100% make you feel better, and it'll put you on the right direction. And for me also, it's I'll never be a young dad, because I'm already in my 40s. I'm not going to be a young grandparent either, that's for sure, right? So it's like you try to think about these things that are farther out, and have, you don't have to like live in fear of them, but like, how do you want to age? How do you want to do these things, and like, what is the best possible investment for you? And I think that would be, and working with somebody who can help you. And if they're just like, doing things that you would find online, do all these burpees, for an hour, somebody who might find at the gym, do an hour of burpees, all right, and then you might get sweaty and sore, but like, I don't think that is really the best. You can do that yourself, it's like find somebody who will push you in the right direction. Does that make sense?
That's an excellent piece of advice, because I definitely found, and I've found this in many different fields, that when I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, I seem to get places a lot faster. Yeah. You want to try to find somebody who's been where you were and gone to where you want to go, and then also helped other people do the same thing. For not people who are like already super athletic and you made them more athletic, but also being able to work with people who are starting from zero, or who are rusty, or just otherwise are everyday average people, like most of us are, and take them to doing stuff that the average person off the street couldn't do, if that is, of course, your goal. And find somebody who can help you. And I especially like what you pointed out, doesn't have to be every week, doesn't have to be 5 times a week, it could be once a month, because that's what you and I did. And you're in stellar shape now, and you're just getting stronger all the time.
And now that I'm thinking about it too, and that you're like, I don't buy all of your programs, or all of your challenges. Yet. I do buy, but like, I do read all of your emails, right? Like, I read every one. There's usually, they make me laugh, and think. But like, there was one that you said about the hand. I wasn't planning to do this hand one, and you said somewhere, but like, why buy another hand device, right? So I was sitting there, like, I'm online shopping for like, hand crushers, and like thinking about all sorts of, like, it's like, all right, well, I could just do this program, and with it's, when I started out in like the home gym, I was just like, you'd go online and I'd find these like maces, and like you'd try to get the shoulders going, and so I'm like, I bought like a mace, which I do use. It's kind of fun, but like, it's like, oh, I could have just like hung, and like done like that. And the real moment that was like, I put all this together was like my neck. It wasn't hurt, but like, I've had trouble keeping up on the crawling, and I have trouble sometimes when you deadlift and you need to be able to build the strength in your legs. So I was like, all right, what am I going to do? I was like, well, I have to get this device that hooks up to my pull-up bar that costs like $400. And that's the only possible way I can strengthen my neck. Or it's like, oh, like Alex had something a while back about how like Mike Tyson's neck and like something or other. And the guys, I remember the email. I was like, I went back and I saved myself $370, I think,
Very nice.
just
And
going.
so it was Necronodmicon that you bought, I would bet.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's great, and so I do it for just do it a couple times a week, and that was or not a couple times a week. I did the program, right, so it's
Mm.
every day, but and then I don't have this issue anymore, and then I'm hoping that I'm hoping that it strengthens these two fingers to the point where I can get above. I'm doing snatches with the 54, but before we met, I was probably doing snatches poorly, and I was doing it with and I couldn't safely do it with the 20, and now I'm doing the 24, and I think last time I did it on the left hand, I got up to 20, and it's not that the movement hurts, right? It's nothing that I wasn't tired at all. It's those two fingers. I didn't feel like I could hold on to it physically anymore. And then my right side, I can get up to 20 pretty easily. So it's I never really thought about taking the snatch test, but I'm, some of the way there at this point, and it's there's the clear point that I need to fix, so rather than buying a million different things, it's just take a couple
Knowledge is
textbooks
power.
and yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, good. I'm very much looking forward to hearing how you do with Kung Fu Grip. Glad that you picked up Necronodmicon as well. Folks, if you have not done any of my programs, you're going to notice they have very oddball names. I like to make the name something that's memorable and tongue in cheek, and sometimes a bit of an inside joke. But yeah, keep me posted on how the hands do, because by the way, as soon as those get stronger, not only the snatch is probably going to feel easier, but I bet the rope climbs are going to feel a bit more confident as well. And there's going to be some stuff in Kung Fu Grip that's going to help you with the wrist strength necessary for that stuff too. So
Very excited.
I'm sure that you are going to crush it. Absolutely. Any final words before we go our separate ways and you go crush weakness out in New York while I do the same in Nebraska?
No, I've listened to almost all of your podcasts, and certainly all the long form ones, and they're it's just an honor to be on. So thank you so much. I really.
Yeah, it's been a
cool.
pleasure. I've been hoping to get you on for some time. I know we've talked about it a couple times in the past, so I'm glad we were able to finally make it work. And I know that you are going to be responsible with this newfound fame that you will no doubt get from this. But is there anywhere people can follow you online if they want to keep up with your training?
I don't post online. It's one of these choices that I've made is one of these choices, I don't want to have my phone out in front of my kids as much, so I just set timers on it. My wife actually is an influencer, so if you want to follow her, you can see a lot of pictures of me and doing things, but you don't have to do that.
Well, I'll have you back on the podcast, and you can update us then, so that way people can be waiting in anticipation and they can really earn the excitement.
Well, I'll send you some. So how about I'll send you some videos from time to time, and
I love it.
You can update them.
Definitely.
I follow you on social media. You're great. So and on Medium. So
good. Excellent. Well, yes, folks, keep an eye out. I am sure that we're going to be hearing a lot more from Josh, particularly as he works on those rope climbs and assorted other feats, laughing in the face of gravity. So I will keep everybody updated. And in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. And Josh, again, thank you for being on the show.
Sure. Thank you.
And as always, have fun. Happy training.